What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Palantir stock, ticker symbol PLTR, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Tuesday, April 30th. Alright guys, Palantir stock here today up 31 cents a share. That's plus 1.38% in regular trading hours. It is up an additional 10 cents here in the after hours, at least as of right now. As always, take that movement with a grain of salt. Volume is very, very low. Let's take a look at this thing and see what kind of bias we can pull out of today's trading. Starting with a quick look at the volume profile, we'll then look at the psychological levels that myself, institutions, and traders are all going to be watching heading into tomorrow. And then we'll finish out with the directional bias out of the chain and the expected move. Let's take a look here, starting with a quick analysis of that volume profile here on the 5-minute chart. Listen, guys, by the way, if you're new here, I cover Palantir stock every single day, so please, greatly helps out the channel if you go ahead and subscribe, and I'll keep the Palantir videos coming. Now, let's take a look, guys. Really what we're looking for here, because the price action's done. That happened, right? We know that. If we peel back, though, a layer, and we look at the volume profile as almost a completely separate entity, what we can do is we can say, okay, was there any bias that either supports little pops or drops intraday, and doesn't support the surrounding movement that went the opposite direction, or does the volume profile actually tell a different story compared to the price action? So if we take a look here, we're looking for anything that's out of context. The opening bar, high volume, rather contextual. We expect that. Okay, and then a quick dump off in volume. You know, yeah, that third bar kind of hung on a little bit, but for me, it's not really enough to go out there and assign bias to that. Volume dropped off very quickly within the first 15 minutes, down to a contextual intraday volume. Really, the only thing, guys, is that we usually expect this late day volume to increase. This is kind of like the bullish version of what happened over here. The red volume kind of hung on a little further into the day. The bullish volume began a little earlier, I suppose, a little further out from the close than what I might normally expect to see on Palantir. We got kind of that jump there. The truth is, guys, we got a very small amount of bearish bias way over here on the open, and a very small amount of bullish bias heading into the close. The way that I like to look at these things is when you have things off the open and off the close that kind of offset each other, I tend to put a little bit more weight on what's heading into the close since it is the more recent data, but realistically, it's slight. So let's move on. Okay, let's take a look now at the self-fulfilling prophecy psychological levels to pay attention to that I know a lot of traders and institutions are also paying attention to day to day. So as we head into tomorrow, starting with the 30-minute chart here, you guys can see over the weekend when we headed into the close on Friday, we were holding well above both the 200 period and the 50 period here on the 30-minute chart. Today, we basically spent a lot of the day, when you start looking at this 30-minute, it becomes clear, kind of consolidating after we got that pop in pre-market, and we eventually came in and tested the 50 period and held it and bounced on that higher volume as we came into the close. I mean, realistically, guys, it's not a tremendous bounce, but seeing that hold to a T and then pulling away on higher volume into the close, not a bad thing to see. Tomorrow, really all I'm looking for on the 30-minute in particular, if we see a downside test of that 50 period, I want to see that hold. Bulls, if I'm a bull, right, I want to see that hold. I don't mind what volume it makes the test on as long as it bounces away on higher volume. Bears, your ideal scenario on the 30-minute tomorrow, a high volume downside break, low volume retest, high volume rejection, right, to reclaim that as kind of a short-term resistance level. Let's move on into the 4-hour and take a look. You guys can see that as the days go on, we're pulling away from that 50 period here on the 4-hour and coming in closer to that 200 period, which is now less than 2% away. We know that's well within range for a single day move on Palantir. We've seen certainly crazier things. So realistically, that's what I'm paying the closest attention to here in the near future. Bulls, I eventually, again, this 23 we'll talk about, but bulls, I'm eventually going to want to see a break upside, pullback, test, and hold of that 200 period to reclaim that as support. And that'll help to yank the 50 period up in the meantime. But again, the 4-hour chart, guys, both of these, the 200 period moves very slowly. The 50 period, though, it's not going to move nearly as quick as the 50 period on the 30-minute. So we have to have realistic expectations with how quickly this thing can get back upside. You know, it can take, even on big volume and a big upside move, it can take a few days, if not a week, to make any substantial upside move because it's just delayed on the 4-hour. It's a longer time frame. Now listen, if you're a bear, guys, obviously the daily is going to come first, but if we just stay specific to the 4 hour for 1 second, if you're a bear, any test of the 200 period, you obviously want to see that reject hard. Okay. Now, the most important chart of all, guys, very contextual right now on Palantir, is the daily. We don't have earnings until next Monday. Okay, so keep that in mind as we head into the expected move conversation. But right now, there's two incredibly important things going on Palantir. First of all, we are like 0.5% away from that $23 area. Okay. And also, if we take a look, we're about 2.7% away from that 50-day moving average. So realistically, you know, a 0.8, 0.91% move, because it's about, you know, 0.5 to 0.75 of 1% to that $23 region, that puts us above 23 bulls. Step one, if we can reclaim 23 bucks a share, that's a huge psychological, therefore now technical level that I want to see break and hold. And bulls, if we can pull that off, we can look to utilize 23 as kind of a support level like trampoline to push up for the ultimate test of that 50-day moving average, which we know everyone's paying attention to. Bears, of course, you don't want to break above the 50, but step one, ideally, is just if you can just reject off 23 hard on high volume, that could set you bears up for a downside test in the near term of that 2130 area, which is kind of the downside, the bottom of that channel that we're currently in, trying to break out of. Now, implied volatility. Let's zoom out a little bit and let's grab a couple more months here. If we look back for the last few months, you guys can see on Palantir, we're still sitting, you know, it's up a little bit today. We're still sitting a little bit high in that range, okay? So you guys know when it's high, if you've been holding contracts, you've seen some Vega value pumped into those contracts. So you're running a slightly higher risk of IV crush if implied volatility starts to fall and head back toward equilibrium in, you know, comparison to your relevant trade or intended trade time frame. Okay. And for those of you who are maybe looking to buy contracts, again, you're paying up for that Vega pump that's currently priced into those contracts if you're buying them, right? For those of you who are looking to farm out premium by selling contracts, obviously doing so when IV's high is a more favorable scenario. But just know that if you're buying contracts that goes for calls or puts, you are running a slightly elevated risk of some potential IV crush. Okay, so just be aware of that. Now, the expected move on Palantir. Again, we don't have earnings before this Friday. Okay, now the next expiration we have, since Palantir runs weekly expirations, is this Friday, May 3rd. And if we look at the expected move on May 3rd, it's plus or minus $1.07 per share. Okay, so that's the expected move by Friday's close compared to today, Monday's close. But if we divide that by 4 trading days, since again, not one day in particular is expected to be a higher volatility event, at least being priced in by the chain, we get about plus or minus 27 cents per share. Okay, but we're not done. Remember that assumes 4 green days in a row or 4 red days in a row. So I like to add back about 50%. That brings us to a plus or minus expected move by tomorrow, Tuesday's close, of 40 cents per share. Okay, so a little bit more volatility than today is what's expected tomorrow. With a little bit of guesswork, we have to do the best we can, since, you know, of course, we don't have the luxury of daily expirations on Palantir. But remember, guys, you know, expected move, that's a technical term. By design, it's not meant to have directional bias priced in there, right? That's the volatility expectation. It's quite literally the 1 standard deviation expected move being priced in by the traders. Okay, so with a little bit of guesswork, we're able to really kind of zone in on, you know, maybe what it is the market's expecting in terms of volatility. And that, along with the analysis, helps us get both a directional bias and a volatility bias, which is a very effective and dangerous duo. I suppose dangerous for your competitors to trade with. It's really important to have a full picture and have both the volatility picture and, of course, the directional picture. And then especially if you're trading options, you become that much more effective. But listen, there's one more thing we can do here for directional bias, right? As promised at the beginning of the video, let's take a look at the contracts. This is all from today. 213,000 total contracts traded today, 151,000 calls, 62,000 puts. So we're seeing a heavy call side bias on Palantir here today. Now, again, this video is geared toward tomorrow. So if we break this down by time frame, the short-term speculators, that's 0 to 20 delta range, about 45,500 calls, and about 25,900 puts. So again, we're seeing a pretty, volume's a little lower. Okay, so take it with a grain of salt, but it's a relatively heavy bullish bias out of the short-term speculators and quite a heavy bullish bias out of the overall ratio. Listen, guys, if you get value out of these Palantir videos, again, I cover Palantir every day. All I ask, it takes half a second. It's 100% free. Please just leave a like on the video and then get out of here. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.